Hello and welcome to today's session of Every Mark Matters with Mr. McDonald's. Today we are having a look at Edexcel Paper 1, Medicine Through Time, with a specific focus on medicine on the Western Front. As you can see, I've had a slight malfunction here, so we're starting halfway done, but it's not the end of the world. Our question of the day is: how useful are sources A and B for an inquiry into the work of medical staff at in the casualty clearing station on the Western Front? As you can see, I've already made a start here. How useful is our command phrase, and that means that you must analyse the sources. You must do source A and source B. Now, before we even look at the sources themselves, we need to dedicate some time to the focus. So we need to think about here the work of medical staff at the casualty clearing stations. And whenever I'm thinking about how to do these types of questions, I try to organise my knowledge into three areas. The first area might be bleeding. The second might be infection. And then the third might be time. Okay? So bleeding, infection, time. So I'm going to try and organise my thoughts around these topics. Okay? So let's just think about bleeding first. Okay? So a polite reminder, 70% of all wounds were caused by shells. By shell fire. Let's also think about bleeding. So what other knowledge might we know? Well, in essence, men died quickly from shock and blood loss. Okay, what about infection then? So we've got two facts to fit in with bleeding. What about infection? Well, remember is that these stretcher bearers that went out to collect the men, well, the injured could be left in no man's land for hours, maybe even days. So injured left in no man's land for hours or days. Alright? What else do we know about infection? Well, remember is that the shells could push in mud, cloth, or dirt that could cause infection. So infection could be caused by muds, cloth, and bacteria in the muds. If we think about time, well, remember, any delay is a bad thing. So any delay is immediately something bad. What else do we know about time? Well, because in some instances they needed to be operated immediately, so the casualty clearing stations, some had operating theatres. I misspelled theatres. Some had high tech, like X-rays. What else do we know about casualty clearing stations? They were close to the front, weren't they? And they carried out operations. So when it comes to using phrases like "I know from my own knowledge," I'm going to try and nick facts from bleeding, infection, time. And over time, what we're going to do is we're going to build up knowledge around this, around these terms. Okay, right. The final key to our puzzle here is what we call the second order concepts. And our second order concept are sources A and B. Alright? And I just really want to make something clear. When we are analysing sources, we are analysing 3 areas of knowledge. So I'm going to use I'm going to write that down. 3 areas of knowledge. Okay? The first area of knowledge is content. That means, what does it say? It's say/show. The second area of knowledge is provenance. That means who made it, when was it made, and why was it made. And then finally, the final area of knowledge is own knowledge. The final area of knowledge is own knowledge. And that is where you might use something, or I call it my golden ginger phrase, I know from my own knowledge. Okay? Right, so we've had a look at the breakdown of the question. Why don't you, right now, have a little look at the sources themselves? So why don't you begin to press pause and take a moment analysing the provenance, which is just up here, and the contents. Alright, do that for both. So press pause to take all the time you need, and you are focusing on, remember, the work of medical staff at the casualty clearing station. Okay, press pause, and I'll see you shortly. Okay, welcome back. So I'm not going to spend a great deal of time analysing the sources because this is the challenging element that I want you to have a go at on your own. What I am going to demonstrate to you is I just want to remind you the mark scheme, as in how to get full marks with this. And I'm going to write this down here. So I'm going to put success criteria. I'm going to try to anyway. Green pen instead. I'm going to put success criteria down here. Okay, and this is scored in something called AO3, or Objective Assessment Objective 3. All right, and the way that they do this is they score this in level 1, level 2, and level 3. So in other questions you might have done, it might go up to level 4. It doesn't with this particular question. The highest question is simply level 1. The highest score or the highest level is level 1, 2, and 3. All right, and the way they mark this particular paper, or this particular question, is they use JAC. Judgment, analysis, contextual knowledge. Okay? Right, so allow me to demonstrate. I'm just going to spend time on judgment. So I'm going to write down judgment here. Okay? Right, so let's just do level 1. So this is 1 to 2 marks. Level 1 is a simple reason. Alright? One way source A is useful is because, and that's it. That's all they've put. Level 2 is a summary of one source. Level 3 is a summary of both sources. And I just want to clarify what I mean by summary. Lots of students often struggle to demonstrate a reason why sources are useful. So my advice would always be, is just give a summary of what the source is saying to you. It's useful because it refers to this. It's useful because, you know, it's saying about how hard or easy it was to work in the trenches, or how many men were being killed or shot. Okay, so there's our judgment. So just to clarify, I mean by summary, I mean you're just using that to frame your explanation about why the source is useful. Okay, right. Let's go on to analysis. All right. So for level 1, that there's either no quotes and a simple paraphrase. Okay, so just any random wish-wash about the sources. It says X, Y, and Z. You might get a level 1 in terms of your analysis. Level 2 means you've got one quote plus an inference. Or what you might have done is you might have analysed the provenance. Okay? Level 3 is 2 quotes plus inferences and you've analysed the provenance. Okay? And then finally, looking at the final element, so we've got judgment, we've got analysis, I've not done a great job there, and then we've got contextual knowledge, alright? And again, I use this to teach this, I teach this through the acronym of JACK, Judgment, Analysis, Contextual Knowledge. So level 1, for contextual knowledge, that's your own knowledge, there's just no knowledge. You or the student has not written anything. Level 2, that is some vague knowledge. The exam mark scheme specifically says limited knowledge. And then finally, it says, for level 3, relevant, precise knowledge. Okay, so that's any knowledge that's relevant to the question or relevant to the source, and that is precise. Okay, right. So, a polite reminder, you are now going to spend the next 10 minutes, let me just annotate this, 10 minutes writing down 2 paragraphs telling me how useful are sources A and B for an inquiry into the work of medical staff on the casualty clearing station. Put away any form of distraction. Make sure you've got the sources in front of you to analyse how useful are sources A and B for an inquiry into the work of medical staff at casualty clearing stations on the Western Front. 10 minutes, press pause, I'll see you shortly. Okay, welcome back, right. So, I'm hoping there that you spent 10 minutes having a look at sources A and B and telling me how useful are they for an inquiry into the work of medical staff on the casualty clearing station on the Western Front. I'm very conscious of my handwriting, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to read out my answer, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to self-assess my own answer, and as I'm doing this, I'm going to suggest you self-assess your own. So allow me to read out my answer, and again I'm going to start with source A. Okay, so one reason source A is useful for an inquiry into the work of medical staff at the casualty clearing station is because because of how overwhelming it shows the casualty clearing stations to be. So you'll notice there, all I've done is I've just done a summary. Alright, is I've just given a general summary of what I've found about it. Okay, yeah, oh my gosh. May Tilton, she really just described how difficult it is to work there. Thunderous noise of raging battles. We worked night after night. My goodness, that sounds very overwhelming. So straight away, that first sentence, I have provided evidence of judgment. Okay, right. Now what I need to do is I need to hopefully analyse some of the content of the source. For example, I missed out the word source, that's not a good sign. In the source it says, we worked night after night in the thunderous noise of raging battles. This suggests that nursing staff were clearly overwhelmed by the constant number of casualties coming into the casualty clearing station. So here I've got my quote, and then I've got my inference. I love this phrase here. This suggests that the best students that get the grades 8s and 9s use phrases like this suggests that, or this means that. And what is done there is I've started off my analysis. So with any hope, I'm going to hope that I'm going to find another piece of analysis where I've spoken about the content. Let's continue. It also goes on to say, now this phrase here is great for when you need to present another piece of knowledge. It also goes on to say, one patient told me I don't want to die. And you'll notice here, it's quite a long quote, so I've just used ellipses just to skip bits out. He died the next morning, which shows the true emotional trauma and shock caused by being a nurse at the casualty clearing station. Again, there's my other bit of analysis. So all I've done there is I brought in 2 quotations and 2 inferences. Now I'm going to have a look at using my own subject knowledge. I know that time was essential at the casualty clearing station. The more delay in treatment, the more likely that bleeding or infection from the trenches would set in. Perfect. There's my okay. So there's my own subject knowledge. The source is written by May Tilton in 1917. She was a senior nurse describing her experiences. So I've stated the author. So I've stated who made it. I've stated when it was made. She was a senior nurse describing it. Now what I need to do is I'm going to explain why it's useful. This would make the source useful. So again, I've used that phrase again. As her position means that she is high up in the FANY and would have a strong understanding of what is happening across the casualty clearing station. So again, what I've done there's my provenance. Now, what I'm going to show you now is I'm going to show you how to get full marks, and it's going to be talking about the limitations of the provenance. However, she is limited by the fact that she published her account in 1933, meaning some of her accuracy could have been lost to time. So all I've done there is I've mentioned the limitations of the provenance. Okay, let me go on to the next one. Source B. One reason why Source B is useful is how it shows how organised the casualty clearing stations were. Again, there's my summary. Alright, and there's my judgment mark. For example, it describes how the FANY worked in teams and were divided into roles, meaning that despite the clearly overwhelming nature of the casualty clearing stations, they were prepared to deal with any eventuality. So again here, now you'll notice that I haven't actually quoted, but I've just sort of described what it says. So again, I've got a description of the content. And then what I've got is I've got an inference. Okay, so you'll see that there's my first bit of analysis. Let's see what it says. Moreover, it goes on to say, I was given a scalpel to remove small pieces of shrapnel and clean up minor wounds. This shows how organised and methodical the process that the CCS had to deal with the injured. So again, that whole moment there, all of that was analysis. Okay, so if I just go straight back to here, all of this down here, there's my analysis. And then finally, finishing off the last little bit, so you'll notice that I've summarised the source providing the reason why it's useful. I've brought in 2 quotations and inferences. Now what I need to do is I need to provide my own subject knowledge and then talk about the provenance. I know from my own knowledge that shell fragments push mud, cloth and bacteria into wounds, meaning that removing shrapnel was essential to treating the injured. Perfect. So there is my okay, so there's my knowledge. Source B is an interview of Effie Garden, her nurse who served at a CCS. This is useful because as a part of an interview, she is more likely to share an honest response given how formal it is. And the book is likely to educate and inform, making it reliable. So again, there I've spoken about the provenance of the source, why it makes the source useful. I've got a little bit about a limitation here. However, we do not know the question she was asked, which limits its usefulness. So there's my limitations. So really difficult question there, but a great question to get full marks. So allow me to demonstrate. Have I got a simple reason? Well, I think I've got something a little bit more than a simple reason. Have I got a summary of one source? I think I've got more than that. I have indeed. I've got 2 summaries of both sources. I've presented why each source is useful. Have I got 2 quotes and inferences? Absolutely. Have I analysed the provenance? Absolutely. And have I got relevant and precise knowledge? Yes, I have indeed. So in which case then, if I use Jack, so judgment, I am a level 3. Analysis, I am a level 3. And contextual knowledge, I am a level 3. Okay? Dead easy stuff. So that puts my answer there at an 8 out of 8. Now, just before you go, there is one final question I want to show you. and that is this tricky question here. So this will always come after the sources, alright? And allow me to read out this question to you. So this is a tag onto the how useful question, and what this is, it says, how would you follow up source A to find out more about the work of medical staff on the casualty in the casualty clearing station? 4 marks. Now this is a very tricky question, and what I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to break it up. Okay, so again, our command phrase here is how would you follow up, and what this question specifically wants you to do is it wants you to repeat the process of the historian. Okay? The focus, it hasn't actually changed for this question, is the work of medical staff. So there's our focus. Now we don't need to annotate any knowledge just yet. Okay? And then finally, our second order concepts is the sources, but make sure you are only talking about source A. Do not talk about source B yet. Okay, right. So what I'm going to do is, technically you would only have this section here, but I've got 2 ways to show you how to answer it. So I'm going to teach you how to do both. Okay? The first one, I think, is the easiest one, and what I'm going to call it Carrington's Law. Okay, so this is the much easier way to do it. Okay, so firstly, when it comes under detail in the source, what you need is a quotation from source A. From source A. Then it's going to say a question that I would ask. And ideally, the whole point is that you are following up this detail or this quotation. Alright, now the best way to do this is you need to start your question with how effective, okay, and then you're going to add in the focus of the cue, okay, and that's a dead easy way to do this. Now, once you've done that, once you've done your quotation, that's 1 mark. Once you've used the phrase how effective and added it with the focus of the cue, that's your 2nd mark. Then what the exam board wants you to do is they want you to memorize a load of sources and then come together away with sort of thinking about a source that fits in here. What you don't need to do that, all right? There's no point to do that. So what you're going to do is you're going to refer to the provenance of source B. Okay? If you just put source B, you're not going to get any marks. And then finally, how might this help answer my question? You are just going to give an inference from source B. So the whole point of this is they want you to memorize these sources and think about which would be better for what. There's no point in doing that. It's too much work, too much knowledge to be able to take in. So all we're going to do is we're going to nick from source B. So there's the first example, is Carrington's Law. Okay? The other alternative is you can use the old RAMC medical records. So again, with this first one, you still require a quotation. Then you can ask any question. Okay? Then what you can do is you can use the RAMC medical records. And then down here, all you do is you're going to say why. Okay? What I'm going to do is I'm going to suggest you spend 5 minutes now at having a bit of a think here about how to answer this. You don't need to do both. I'm going to show you how to do both, but you don't need to do both. So give yourself 5 minutes. You might need less than that. You might need more than that. But pause the video, press 5, and give yourself a maximum of 5 minutes to think about how would you answer this question, either using Carrington's Law or the RAMC medical records trick. Okay? Right. Press pause. See you shortly. Okay, so welcome back, ladies and gents. So I'm hoping there that you've spent 5 minutes or less thinking about having a go at this question here using either Carrington's Law or the RAMC medical records. Okay, so allow me to demonstrate. I'm going to do both, alright? I'm going to do mine in green. Okay, so firstly, for whatever we do is we need to have a quotation. Alright, now just for the sake of ease, I'm going to use the same quotation. Okay, and the quotation that I want to use is, right, I am actually going to use this first quotation here. We worked night after night. So I'm going to put in here, quotation marks, we worked night after night. Okay, so if you've got a quotation, doesn't matter, so long as it's from source A, give yourself 1 mark straight away. Okay, right, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to think about a question. So again, that I'm going to use the same one there, okay, but I'm just going to do Carrington's Law to begin with. Alright, so the question that I would ask would be how effective, so I've started my question with how effective. Okay, now I need to think about the focus of the question, and our focus is the work of medical staff in a casualty clearing station. So I just need to add them together. How effective was the work of medical staff at our CCS? Okay. So again, if you've got that right, if you have put how effective and added the focus of the question, give yourself a 2nd mark. Okay, right, a type of source. Now remember, the whole point of this is I want you to memorise sources. We're not going to bother doing that. We are just going to refer to the provenance of source B. And let me have a look at the provenance of source B. So here's the provenance yet again. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to use an interview from Effie Garden. Now, what I'm actually going to do is I'm not actually going to name Effie Garden because I'm going to keep it really vague. Okay. So what I'm going to use is I'm going to say an interview as part of information for a book. Okay. So what I'm going to use, and I'm going to say an interview for. We'll start with who from. From a FANY nurse for a history book. Okay, perfect. Alright, so all I've done is I've just stated, that should say Anne, I've just stated the provenance of source B. Okay, if you've done that, put your 3rd mark there. If you've just stated source B, give yourself a great big X. That's not right. Alright, although I appreciate what you're doing. Alright, and then finally, for 4 out of 4 using Carrington's Law, is you need an inference. Now, you've already done the hard bit already from your how useful question. So your inference here is it would provide a overview of how organised the CCSs were. Okay? And it's literally all I'm doing is I'm actually just referring to the text in source B. Okay? So there's no point memorising sources for here. All you can do is just steal your inferences from source B. Right, let's have a look then at the other side, the RAMC medical records technique. Okay, so we're using the same quotation, so I'm going to use the same quotation there. All right, a question I would ask is how many casualties died at night A type of source I could use, RAMC, medical records. How might this help answer the question? Well, the RAMC would have a timely records of deaths. And there we go. If you've put something like that, there's 1 mark, there's your third mark, there's your fourth mark, there's your third mark, there's your fourth mark. Okay, so 2 really easy ways to do that. I personally prefer Carrington's law. The reason why is RAMC medical records doesn't always fit in with the question, but a tricky question made considerably easier by 2 particular routes. I will leave you there for the afternoon. Thank you very much. I'll see you next time. Take care. Bye-bye.